Chapter 8. Oh, how the turntables. Karenna. General Davis is pissed as shit with you, Max DuPont said, as he threw his attacker off easily. And she's a Marine, so... He looked at Karenna expectantly after his victory, and she rolled her eyes and gave a little clap. Huzzah! She said in an unenthusiastic tone. Thank you, DuPont said, bowing. He turned to his sparring mate. Try coming in from my lower right this time. It's my weakness. Night's small gym was deserted, except for the three of them, probably because it was 0200 hours ship's time. The sparring circle sat in the middle, surrounded by fitness equipment, so there would always be an audience, except in the middle of the night, it seemed. General Davis was mad. Great, because one more person going after her was just what she needed. You don't ignore LaShawn Davis, Kay, DuPont said. Even I don't ignore her, and I don't give a shit about how important someone thinks they are. Davis had sent Karenna a message on the day they were leaving for Earth, for the God's sake, and then everything else had happened. DuPont's sparring partner, a slight lieutenant with a jaunty ponytail, chose that moment to come at him, knocking DuPont on his ass. He said. Good, okay. He got up with a wince, holding his side. He held up his hand. I think that's enough for today. Let's hit the showers. I'm good, Max, the young lieutenant said. She bowed ironically, same way DuPont had done earlier, threw Karenna a sketch salute, and left Knight's gym, grinning. He stared after her. She didn't even break a sweat, he said, pointing at the door. Gods, Kay, I'm getting old. I'm going to shower. Join me? Karenna said. Sure. Whatever, Max. Went on Knight. You just rolled with it. Anyway, DuPont said, as he showered behind a curtain, and Karenna sat on a bench on the other side, steam collecting uncomfortably on her jumpsuit. Here's the deal. I was sent to Baumgarten to root out this guy, Abraham Walder. He's been inciting violence across the outer territories of Sol, and probably even directing and training attackers, and Davis and our Marines have tracked him to a hard-traveled province in the interior of Baum's continent. That was over a year ago, of course, so I need to do some recon and see where the asshole is now. And maybe get him dead. Doesn't Union Intelligence Group have primacy out there? She asked. They weren't in Union territory, so the civilian agency ruled the roost. UIG was not all about the shoot-first mentality the fleet and the Marines often had, and they were right, too. DuPont, on the other hand, was the come-out-swinging type. Sending him into a delicate situation like the tinderbox of the Baumgarten system was a dangerous choice. Yeah, part of the job is convincing them to play, which is why, by the way, Fleet wants to send us all back into the Baumgarten system. He paused, the water changing pitch as DuPont, visible as a distorted outline, ducked his head under a tap. Davis begged and pleaded for more resources, and Fleet wants to play nice with the Marines, so here we are. Hand me that towel, will ya? Well, screw that anyway. What in the hells were Khayyam and Hawking going to do that DuPont's crew couldn't? Karenna grabbed the towel off the hook and tossed it over the curtain. They should be out here, figuring out how to get everyone home, not acting like everything was normal and going after some big bad. It felt eerily like her helplessness that night outside Omicron Serrani, where her ship systems failed. For a while, life support had failed too, but she tried to pretend that had never happened, that there was never a chance they could have slowly suffocated to death, all alone out there in the black. So we're doing the briefing in 30 minutes? Karenna asked, as DuPont exited, towel wrapped around his lower half. She raised her eyebrows. Good heavens, Max. You've gotten a lot more beat up than the last time I saw you shirtless. Because indeed, shirtless was a common DuPont state of being. He grinned, but it didn't seem to reach his eyes. Every scar tells a story, so yeah. She doesn't seem to care it's our sleep cycle. We'll do the meeting just you and me today, but she wants everyone on this, Kay, including Hawking. He paused. You got the message from Ma inviting you to dinner. Or dinner, since for us it'll be the butt crack of morning. Tell me you're saying yes. Just rip off the bandage, girl. There had been too many bandages. Too soon. Now another? She clenched her jaw. This is bananas, she said, crossing her arms. DuPont sat next to her with a heavy thump, droplets of water from his hair landing on Karenna's arm. Hey, he said, knocking shoulders with her. I'm going to be there, and you know what? I'm not going to let you freak, even if I have no idea what the freak out is about. She placed her head on his wet shoulder briefly. I missed you, dude. He ruffled her hair and then slapped his bare thighs as he stood. Let's say I get dressed and we get this thing with Davis over with. We tell Wyndham Ma we'll be there today, and I'll head on over with you, okay? Okay. She had already seen Ma and Riley. She had conquered that. But did that mean she was going to meet her younger self? She couldn't deal with that. She needed time. This was all moving too fast. DuPont set the briefing to pipe into his sprawling bridge, and even though the meeting was at 0300 hours, behind them was chaos, given the number of people he had working there at any given time. Probably because DuPont liked an audience for shenanigans. General Davis had a Union intel briefer assigned to her, and, dear gods, it was a teenager. Okay, maybe not, but the kid couldn't have even been out of secondary school when Karenna had taken command of Khayyam. The briefer read from his codex, shaky in the spotlight. Intelligence indicates a tie between Abraham Walder and the bomb attacks on Ceres last month. The JEC has a confirmed mandate to go after the destabilizing influences in the vicinity of Baumgarten's star. A hollow representation of Baumgarten played on the screen, showing its major mines and cities and its moon. None of the other planets in system were suitable to host life. Most were too far away from the dim red dwarf sun, with Baumgarten's closest neighbor, the inner planet Unget, being too close. The hollow chart also showed the disposition of non-fleet ships in the area, like the Corelli corvette Two Brothers in system, and another Corelli ship, Bernbergle, in a drive bubble executing a ponderous turn back to Alpha Centauri. Apparently, the Corelli government had gotten the memo. Destabilizing influences. You mean terrorists, DuPont cut in. The kid hemmed. I'm not sure technically. Technically my ass, mister. Tristan, sir. My name is Tristan. Okay, Tristan. What do you call a guy who bombs a classroom full of kids? Tristan was silent. That wasn't a rhetorical question, Tristan, but they're called terrorists. So what do you call the guy directing the attacks, Tristan? Sir, with all due respect, we don't know if he directed the attacks. The mandate doesn't mean we've deemed him a terrorist. We simply want to neutralize the inspiration. Neutralize the inspiration. What do we do, Tristan? Ask him nicely to stop? DuPont may have sounded petulant, but given his history, it made sense. Maxime DuPont was from Io. His father had died fighting for its liberation from Mars, a liberation necessary because Earth was dragging its heels and sending troops to free its own territory. So maybe DuPont was a little sensitive about protecting colonists from bad actors. Okay, DuPont, said Davis, rescuing the briefer. I happen to agree with you. But the UIG, she said, glancing at young Tristan, calls the shots out there. They don't think he's a threat, so maybe we can, play nice. Karenna stifled a yawn. 0300 was too damn early in any situation. Even her peers, those early birds, would agree. It's a hard target, Davis said, so let's get out there and do the legwork to be prepared for a strike whenever it's approved. Whoa. Karenna raised her hand, like an idiot, and she quickly lowered it when DuPont gave her an incredulous look. Collis hasn't approved our entrance into the system, she said. Our negotiators are working on that, Davis said. All unprecedented this and developmental grant money that. But we're headed in tonight anyway, regardless of his approval. No, Karenna said. Davis looked at Karenna as if she were sending laser beams from her eyes, reaching across 10 light years through the screen to thoroughly roast, tar, and feather her. Excuse me, Captain? Karenna shrugged and ticked off her fingers. A, you're not in my chain of command. B, I'm in charge out here as the most senior captain. C, we're not sailing in without Callus's express approval. Oh, and D, approval or not, we're not ready to head back in yet. We need to continue to take samples of the substance out here and create a timeline of what actually happened. That's bigger than a bad man holed up in the mountains. If my command has an issue with it, I'll take the heat. My prerogative. DuPont grinned, seemingly taking Karenna's self-declared quasi-promotion in stride, because DuPont didn't follow any order he didn't want to anyway. You're going to answer for that, Lacani, Davis warned. Any delay in operation will be on your head. Fine, Karenna said. We can send Knight ahead on their original mission, but frankly, the rest of us have other pressing priorities, and I'm still not clear on why you need a time-hopping heavy cruiser and a formerly lost-in-space frigate to complement them. Surveillance and recon is Knight's expertise. Ma'am, she added belatedly. Max jumped in. It's because they don't trust me, Kay. Silence. General Davis's heavy sigh spoke volumes. Yep, Max said. Let me guess. Sending me out was fine originally, but now colonists are getting hurt and the government doesn't care, and my masters over at Fleet would rather I have a babysitter to make sure I don't start raining down bombs. Awkward. The silence continued. So it was true, and she was supposed to keep a leash on DuPont? Better her than most. He liked her. The single-mindedness of both armed forces elements worried her, though. 3 ships stuck in a normally restricted sector due to a space-time rift? Hey, time to triple your firepower. Certainly, scientists with the right level of clearance were boggling over Hawking's existence, but as the shrugs over ancients demonstrated, sometimes when things were beyond human comprehension, humanity stopped trying to understand. But other than that, space was broken around an independent, isolated human peoples. Did the Union even care? An hour later, she was in a shuttle with DuPont, headed to Hawking, eating in the captain's mess. Dinner, or, as Ma acknowledged, breakfast. How did she end up back here? The very first time Karenna had eaten in the captain's mess on Hawking, she, young and eager, a relatively new graduate from the academy assigned to her dreamboat, had recently started dating the most eligible bachelor on the ship. Riley. Oh, Riley. That stiff hair, coiffed and in control. The sharp smell of cologne, the starch on his shirt. Strong hands, rough fingers, the heavy look of a chrono on his wrist. How she worshipped him. To this day, the smell of some colognes could send her into a panic spiral. She tried to avoid certain triggers, but she couldn't avoid smells. She couldn't avoid the way dirty blonde hair caught in the light just so, or the way someone grinned, or the stillness in a person's face when they got really angry. The shuttle finished docking. Karenna stopped living in the past, and then she stepped into the past. By her request, no one important was there to greet them, but the bemused stares from the hangar crew almost sent her into her long-standing shyness-induced instinct of curling up into herself. Thankfully, DuPont was there to save her from anxiety. Hells damn it, she was the 06 here. She did a modified, hurried version of her game face. They wanted to get a glimpse of Ren Yilmaz all grown up. They were going to get a captain with 4 decades of command under her belt. Did I ever tell you the hilarious story about when I broke my captain's statue with a piece of steak? She whispered to DuPont as they walked. They exited the lift onto Hawking's habitation ring, and that's when it all hit. It even smelled the same. How could starships have a distinct smell? Who knew how, but it was there. A bit mustier than her ship, but not overwhelmingly so. Some chemical, too, she couldn't identify, used to keep the deck clean. The corridors were larger, although they curved up and around like they did on most fleet ships. She could tell where repairs had been done and some places that still needed patches. Let me guess, Wendell Ma? Mm-hmm. I had just started dating Riley. Steak was tough. My fork was stuck. A culinary sword in the stone. I pulled and pulled and finally won my Excalibur until it flew out of my hand and chipped the corner of Captain Ma's favorite statue set at the middle of the table. I was a brand new flight officer. It was horrible, but funny now. Ma had graciously said he'd been thinking of replacing it anyway. Riley had laughed and planted a kiss on her cheek. It was, after all, a freak accident. They strolled the deck, located far away from most of the activity of the ship and serving as a transfer point to the hangar. The crew down in the hangar had been prepped for their arrival, at least, but she wasn't ready for the double takes she'd get as she moved higher up. She needed time. Her head buzzed as she took in memories, though nothing specific, and more like that bittersweet nostalgia permeating a homecoming. Except it wasn't really sweet, nostalgic, or home. They were almost to the end of the transfer deck when a familiar form fell straight into her. Obnoxiously curly red hair, brown eyes, olive skin. The one lord fucked his mother, the young woman cursed, the vulgarity making Karenna gasp in both shock and delight.